Welcome everyone to the International Mentoring Community Mentoring Lounge, where we have discussions, dialogue about all things mentoring. Mentor, mentee, mentorship. We'll go anywhere because we believe it's a really important topic that we're bringing for the world, with the planet, and from the whole. And today we're going to take a look at the connections between belonging, being, and becoming as it pertains to being, belonging, becoming a mentor who's mentoring. That's what we're sort of going to unpack. So it has a bit of a philosophical flavor to it. I think we would all agree. But when we get into it and we start taking a look at ways in which to put a little bit of a how to or actions to this, I think you'll understand the connection between be, have, do that we tend to bring into our conversations just about every day. And we're going to sort of explore it, have a little bit of fun with that, and maybe bring some new ideas, insights, get you investigating a little bit more and how it might apply for yourself. We're also going to do the Quora Question, which we will do actually here at the beginning. And I'm actually going to be asking Doug about what's happening about his book. And he's been doing at least a podcast or two a week. And I'm just wondering what we're talking about from a mentoring point of view, because I thought you as the audience might like to hear a bit from Doug's perspective on that. So with that, what we're going to do is we are going to jump into that update about the book, Doug. And what we can do is get started. But just before we do that, just remember, please subscribe. It really helps us to get our channel out and about, and we want to get these insights and ideas out for the world. And I'm Dr. Stephen Hobbs. I'm Director of Certification and Education. And Doug, who's joining us, is...
Yeah, and I'm Doug Lawrence, and I'm the Director of Practice and Outreach.
Great. And we're both the co-founders of the International Mentoring Community. So, Doug, you want to give us a little update and maybe a little bit about what's happening with the podcast? And I might poke a question in there just to see what's going on.
So where I am with the book, You Are Not Alone, which is available on Amazon.com and .ca, sales of the book are progressing along quite nicely. The feedback I've been getting has been extremely positive on the content in the book. So that's been good. I'm actually invited to a breakfast meeting tomorrow morning. I believe they call it BNI.
Yes.
So
yeah,
a little plug for BNI, where apparently I'm going to be asked to just provide a very short introduction to what I'm doing and that, and it gives me a chance to market the book. But I think the person that invited me is actually the person that designed the cover for my book, and I believe he may be doing a presentation on that sort of stuff. So we'll wait and see what the outcome is. Aside from that, what you're absolutely correct is I've been doing a number of podcasts, and some weeks are more than others. So 2, sometimes 3 a week, and sometimes, obviously nothing, would transpire. What I'm finding, excuse me, what I'm finding is that a lot of the questions and that are coming out of the podcast and that are directly related to the whole aspect of mental health. And that's probably largely due to the fact that I steer people towards that. So when I am acting as a guest on a podcast, I do try to speak to my own personal journey with post-traumatic stress and with grief. And then I also like to be able to speak to how mentoring can be part of the support structure for mental health and mental well-being.
No, it's great. Yeah. So, and I know I was sort of exaggerating a little bit, but at the same time, every time I look at the feed, Doug saying, "Oh, I got another one coming up," or "I just finished one," and I'm just going, "Wow!" Like he's really going for it, which is super. And I think if anyone's listening in at this point in time, I believe Doug would be a great guest if you were looking at mental health, looking at mentoring, maybe even getting a hold of him and finding out what's going on with the book. So dig in with him and see what's taking place. You can leave a comment in the comment section, and or you can go and leave a comment on the International Mentoring Community website. There is a contact form there, and we'll make sure that Doug gets a hold of that. So Doug, I think what would be helpful is you have a Quora question. So Quora is, for those who don't know about it.
So Quora is a website where there are a number of different categories that are on the website, but basically what it is that you can, anyone, any of our listeners for that matter, can post a question in the various categories that are on the Quora website, and you will get responses back. And I'm one of the respondents when it comes to business mentoring and mentoring, and I forget there's one other category, but most of all, if not all, my responses are all targeted towards mentoring and business mentoring and that. And what I also, I'm recognized in the top 10 respondents of to questions and that on there. So I sit in the top, usually in the top 10 people that are responding to mentoring related questions.
Great. So the question you're going to share with us today and your response, it's over to you.
So the question that I had posed, and it was actually just a recent one, is how do I start a mentoring program at school? My response to that question was I would recommend getting the school management involved in the decision-making process. One of the reasons programs fail is that there is no support from the senior level in the school. You would also need to define who are the recipients of the mentoring, as you'll have to customize the program to meet various age groups. One of the programs that I advised on had elementary students being mentored by high school students who were mentored by university college students. The university college students were then mentored by the business community. You want to make sure that you have these mentoring processes documented and make sure that they are shared with the participants. Customized training for all the participants must be provided, and refresher training should be provided annually. There should be a willingness to be part of this exciting movement. Typically, in an organizational setting, we would do a culture assessment to determine mentor readiness of the organization. Make sure that you have a communication plan that outlines what you are going to communicate and to whom you are going to communicate and the frequency. This is a golden opportunity to introduce mentoring as a way of life.
For sure. Now, the cultural assessment in the organization, I know, is when we extend it, but would you suggest some kind of an assessment even in the school to find out if this mentoring plane will land on this airstrip kind of idea? Okay.
No, definitely. Yeah, definitely. It's so worthwhile to do because there's a whole bunch of outcomes that come out of doing that assessment that will obviously be of extra value to the organization as they kind of take a look and they go, that's what our employees, are looking for. So yeah,
And
it's
in this
definitely
case, the high school students, what are they looking for? What are the other age groups looking for? Making that connection, and I think what it does is words that we use is deepen and enrichen, right? Is that using these kind of tools and techniques just helps to further more about mentoring wherever it's going to happen, right? I think you would agree. Yeah. Okay. Well, wonderful. Thank you for that. And I want to now move into this notion of belonging, being, and becoming. And to be able to set this up, I want to introduce it from a psychological aspect, because there is this notion of psychological safety, even though as we move into it, I'll have a little bit more of a philosophical, as we look for truth. Philosophy is a study of truth and its meaning. But there is a psychological approach sort of nested in itself. And I'm going to attribute this to Brendon Burchard, who is someone who is a business coach, and I've interacted with him over time. And he has done this really deep reading about psychology linked to online learning, linked to online businesses and brick and mortar businesses. And I really enjoyed when he shared it. And this is the 5 words that he put out. He said there's identity, meaning, control, optimism, resilience. So I'd just like to go through each one of them. Is the identity is, and if we think about our own lives, okay, and you just filter this, use this lens just about yourself without even attaching a mentoring, but you can attach mentoring if you want. But the notion of identity is name of myself. What do I recognize about who I am, right? And if I was looking at someone else, well, what's the person's name and how would I recognize them, right? What would be about them that I would see? And then the next word with the meaning is the sort of what's the importance and satisfaction I have about, in the sense, being that identity, okay? And what also pops out there is the significance. So I'm looking at that deeper meaning, all right, that enriching that meaning about who I am. And then there's the sense of control. And this is to, in a way, determine the quality of the experience. It's less about someone else's behavior, right? It's about your own control about how you wish to go about doing what it is that you do, the living the life that you want to live. Because once you're living and you set things in motion, you can't always control what's going on around you, right? It's like the archer who lets the arrow flight to go into flight. Things can happen between when it leaves the bow till it hits the target, all right? And so we can't always just say we can control the whole experience, because guess what? The arrow doesn't always go to the bullseye. It sometimes goes to the outside, even though you're aiming at the bullseye. So that's what I'm referring to metaphorically here. The optimism aspect of this is the hope and really coming from a place of seeing and feeling this hope, and it's sort of connected to the future, right? It's about this confidence about the future, and I have this hope that it will unfold. Some people have started to say that's where a little bit of the positive psychology comes in. I'm not a great proponent of the word positive in front of psychology. I think is, this notion of a deeper meaning and truly understanding what's going on and placing it in relationship to the future. Start looking at it, what's happening for yourself around your life. And then there's this notion of resilience. And this one is a really beautiful one. I think that someday, Doug, I believe we should, there's someone I would like to invite in to have a conversation on the show about resilience. And the way I'm going to share it at the moment is resilience is you recover quickly from a situation like a crisis that has happened. And while you're in there, okay, you are going to experience a lot of experiences. And this is where Doug can talk about, the mental health aspect of this. But what you're able to do through the resilience and understanding sort of how to be resilient, you can figure out how to get through that and end up on the other side in a place better than when you went in, because you've learned so much more. You've been able to gain some confidence to get competent in aspects. But here's the real important aspect about resilience that I'd like to share. It's while you're in there and things aren't necessarily going as well as you'd like, and as you're moving into the learning and getting things to work for you, is with resilience, knowing how to do it, you don't go into dysfunction while you're in that place where it's a little, watery, swampy, right? Whatever way one wants to take a look at it. So that's why I wanted to bring this forward, this identity, meaning, control, optimism. and resilience, because it's a base upon which we can take a look at this notion of belonging, being, and becoming as it applies to mentor. But just before I leave that, I believe that we're probably going to be moving into a sixth area, and it's connected to things like neurodiversity, neuro learning, neuro educating, neuro being about the nerves, about the nervous system. As we learn more about the brain functions, and the body, and how we interact with the world, being for the world, with the planet from the whole, this neurodiversity and how this variations of brain function, behavioral traits, it's really becoming clearer and clearer and clearer about what's taking place. So there's probably going to be an element of that. And then obviously is once you start moving this way and start looking at behavior and interacting with others, you start meeting the notion of sociology, which is the study of community and groups. And so that's for another day, another topic. But I think what we'll do is we'll get into this notion of belonging, being, and becoming. Now, to be able to have this unfold for you, I would like to just start and have a little bit of fun. Now, I haven't really asked Doug this question, okay? He knows I'm going to ask something about being, but he doesn't know quite which way it's going to go. But I'm just curious, Doug, what does it mean to be a mentor? You're in deep practice. What does it mean to be a mentor?
So for me, it's about being instrumental in the growth on a personal and professional basis of the person I'm working with, but also with myself. So what it does is I'm able to recognize not only in myself, but in others when I have made a difference or I have guided them part way on their journey where they may not have gone by themselves before. So it's for me, it's that growth from a personal and professional basis for, like I said, not only myself, but for the mentee as well. And every once in a while, sort of the pat on the back that you sometimes need to keep forging ahead. Every once in a while, I get that message or that card in the mail that says, thank you for who you are and what you do to help others. And that's, if we had to have gratitude, that's the gratitude that I would latch on to is that. But it definitely comes back to the whole aspect of helping others grow on a personal and professional basis, but also understanding that you too will do that, go down that same growth path.
So what you're sharing is the notion of it's for myself, for self, but it's also with others, and the exchange that takes place is about this notion of be a mentor, being a mentor. I would add is when I talk about be, I see the word I am. All right, and then you can fill that in. But also what it gets me going is sometimes when I'm not able to really write it, then am I turn it into a question so that I can explore what it means to be rather than making statements about to be. And it's a little way that I play with it just simply because I'm exploring opportunities all the time and new insights that come in, new ideas, new investigations, new interpretations allows me to expand this notion of belonging, being, and becoming, which is why we wanted to bring this forward with you today so that we could just sort of see what that means for us when we are a mentor. So I've invited Doug to share along, and maybe he has an example at some point in time. And again, because this has a little bit more of a philosophical flavor to it, we may not get so much into the full actions of it, but I'm going to do my best, and I'll ask Doug to help out as we go. Now, there are 7 key words here, word phrases, and I'm going to give them to you, but they're in the show more notes all right, that go with the video. So you can certainly go through them. And they are becoming from for. So think of that as sort of the, the seventh one. So there's 6 underneath that, okay? So what it means then is that you get into this notion of what is called being Solaris, okay? Then it's being planetary, then being natural, then being fully human, and then being for and from. All right. So what we're going to do is I want to talk a little bit about belonging for and from, and becoming from and for a little bit later. I may have just actually mixed that up a little bit, Doug. So I think I should just repeat myself here. My apologies. So what we're going to be doing is it's becoming from and for. That's sort of the out there, the reach out. The opposite end to that, let me do it this way, is belonging for and from. And then in between is this notion of being fully human, being natural, being planetary, being Solaris. So I apologize, everyone, if I may have mucked that up, but let's just get into it. So the notion of becoming from and for, if we place this notion of becoming as an intention, I'm going to become an extraordinary mentor. There is a sense then of an intention that's in the future that you want to bring back so that you can move forward, so you can see it unfold for yourself. And becoming from and for is a way in which to look at this mentoring from this intention, both for the mentor yourself and the mentee. To Doug's point earlier around, how important it is professionally and personally for both the mentor and the mentee. And one of the ways that I do that when I first meet a mentee is I'll say something like, can you just walk me through what you need, want, and desire? I use that to get the conversation going. So that helps me out. But what I do recognize is that the answers are really the first draft. There's a lot more that's going to get filled into this and to take it forward. In some ways, it's more like a formative review. You're just asking to get things going, because guess what? There's going to be either a lot of course corrections, because that's what mentoring will do, or you could end up at a pivot point, and the pivot point could be anything from, wow, I hadn't seen it that way, I think I need to do a real adjustment, or even the pivot point where the mentee goes, I'm not sure the kind of mentor you fit for me, and you may make a suggestion there. So this notion of becoming from and for, it's becoming, I'm looking at the future, bringing that story, that intention into my life at this point in time, so that I can act in a forward way once I come to understand that image, that story that's there for me. So again, I'll just use a phrase like, walk me through about what you need, want, and desire. So when you first walk in, what do you do, Doug?
When I first walk in to meet with somebody for the very first time, I'm doing what I call a scan. I'm looking to see, are there issues that are evident by sort of checking body language and things and stuff that, words that they may say, phrases they may use. I'm looking to see all of that, because that's going to guide which path I take to explore personal, professional growth, mental health, mental well-being, all of those things. But it's a scan of that individual.
Okay. Well, thank you. So remember the sort of the other end of the stick from this notion of becoming from or for. Okay, I'm playing here. It's about belonging for and from. All right. When you're walking into this mentoring arrangement, this mentoring structure to meet your mentor, you as a mentee or you as a mentor, as you're walking into it, you belong to something already. You're paying attention to things that are going on, and the attention may be given over to, oh, I'm going to be walking into something new. I'm meeting someone new. And therefore, how am I going to move forward with them? But I also want to have some understanding of what this is possibly about. And sometimes when you walk into a mentoring arrangement, maybe because it's an organization started, you've got some sense of what's going on. Sometimes Doug, I know he doesn't always know who the mentee is. He's going to meet them for the first time, and you have to sort of go, okay, establish some baseline for this. And I've had that happen. You still get to know people even through Zoom meetings, but if I'm meeting them for the first time, sometimes I have to get a sense of, what do they belong to? Where are they coming from? And ask some questions to get a sense of that. And then be ready to understand what I belong to. Like, for example, I can't escape the fact that I love the philosophy, the psychology, the sociology. It's in me because I have this academic background. I've learned it. And at the same time, the entrepreneurial way comes in. So I bring that. I belong to that history. I belong to it as I come into it. And therefore, it allows me to get ready to ask the questions, but also know that the mentee is going to ask me questions and to be able to move it forward from there. So the notion here is, as you are walking in and this belonging for and from, you need to get the context of that belonging from and for. This is an important element. As quickly as possible, either ask or figure out what's going on, then confirm what does the mentee want to become as you understand their belong, so that you can figure out, as I belong to this, can I help them become, and what does that help me to become better at what it is that I do? Any thoughts about that, Doug, at this point?
I still keep, I think I keep coming back to the scan, and then from that coming up with the questions that need to be asked in order to begin the journey and start the journey going.
So, and sometimes I think what we're attempting to suggest here is that you as a mentor, walking in, have done the scan on yourself, okay? Be clear about, oh, right, mentoring, that's different than coaching, okay? I'm entering into a mentoring. That's what I've been asked to do. So I don't come in with other perceived ways of doing things. I'm coming in belonging to my true sense of what it means to be a mentor. That's, I think, probably another way of phrasing it that helps people to understand it. Okay. So between that belonging for and from and that notion of becoming from and for, so let's just call it now belonging and becoming, okay? There's a lot of hinder and helps that take place in there. There are pains and pleasures, challenges and support, sort of like two ends of a stick, right? And they unfold in between there. And that's where these other five ways of being that I want to explore reside. But I just want to give everyone a quick little tool here. If we understand that between the belonging and becoming, there's sort of two ends of a stick here that you're looking at. Well, there's some pain and pleasure, there's some challenge and support, there is, the hinders and the helps that are in there. To be alert as a mentor is don't grab one end of that stick, grab the middle of the stick, so that what you're able to do is balance up those two perspectives. Because if you go at it thinking, well, I'll help this mentee deal with what hinders and not deal with anything that helps, guess what? You're shortchanging the mentee and yourself. Because if you can grab the middle of the stick and understand that there's hinders and helps, and the mentee joins you in grabbing that, then what you can do is figure out what kind of conversation you want to have. And I remember it in this way, is these two ends, just know that there's two ends. In other words, know the stick exists, trust those two ends that stick exists, and then challenge those two ends that stick. All right. Ways to improve focus and strengthen your connection with people. And that's what I'm hoping I'm laying it out here a little bit, is that this notion of identity, meaning, okay, control, optimism, resilience resides, okay, in between that belonging and becoming. The more that you can bring those together, you can become. The less you know those, all right, it makes it a little bit harder. And therefore, you've got to bring those to life in between those two aspects. So here's a couple of, 5 more ways of looking at it. And we're not going to go into it in deep, all right? I just want to bring a couple of examples forward. One of the first things to take a look at is the notion of being. And then we're going to look at being fully human, being natural, being planetary, being Solaris. Okay. Being actually means to bring forth, to grow, to live with existence and intelligence, to look at the essence of the person, right? So being who you are is what you're bringing to the mentoring arrangement and connection. And if you do that, then it enriches and deepens the conversations and where you're going. And often what that means is, am I willing to ask questions about what I don't know? Am I willing to ask questions to explore other ways of looking at ways of being? That's where the being comes in. But what becomes interesting is this notion about being fully human. A lot of times what we do is we look at and we say, okay, well, what am I thinking about this? 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 And we're using that. But being fully human also means, what's my feelings towards that? Okay. There is a book called Thinking, Fast and Slow by Kahneman, Daniel Kahneman. And what he's doing is he's helping people understand that there's a rational, conscious way of doing our thinking, and there's also this feeling, sometimes non-conscious way of doing it. And the fast way is usually when it wells up from a gut feeling point of view. The rational way takes a little bit longer. The slow way takes a little bit longer. So I've always remembered his work, and we'll put a link to a Wikipedia site if you want to read up a little bit more about it. So what I'm sharing here is, to be fully human is to bring your physical, mental, soul, spiritual, whole versical self. We did a video on that as well. Is bring your full humanness into what's happening, so that you can be for the world. All right. And by doing that, I believe you brighten up the room, because if someone is being fully human as a mentee with me and I'm doing the same, I just feel that there's a brightened room. There's a brightened space in which we're interacting. Wisdom seems to just be there. You don't have to force fit it. It just seems to come forward in the conversations through the questions and answering the questions. And I believe being fully human and in that way is just, it just makes the world a better place. It just makes the world a better place. So before we going into being natural, anything you want to share about being and being fully human, and is just presenting who you are wanting to become, being willing to share that. This is important at this point in time.
Well, I think it's being genuine and it's being vulnerable. And
Yes.
a large part of that is those two words, genuine and being vulnerable. And I know with the work that I do, the more that I can be genuine and demonstrate caring, and the more that I can show vulnerability, the better the engagement is with my mentee.
Yeah, great. And Brene Brown does a lot of work around wholeheartedness, vulnerability, again, if you ever wanted to do a little bit of reading around her, she's really a great person because she presents because of her qualitative research. So she is constantly researching, bringing her ideas forward. So that would be someone, if you wanted to look at about this notion of being and being fully human. The idea about being natural, this one I really love because, and I want to talk a little bit more about it afterwards, okay, once we go through them. If a dolphin is a dolphin, and a tiger is a tiger, and a falcon is a falcon, a bumblebee is a bumblebee, then humans are confused, right? Because they don't necessarily know what it means to be natural. A bumblebee is a bumblebee, and if we take a look at it aerodynamically, it shouldn't fly. But no one told the bumblebee that. It just is natural, knows what it means to be a bumblebee. A dolphin knows what it means to be a dolphin. Falcon knows what to be a falcon. But being natural sometimes is confusing, all right, for humans. And I know this is because often when we hear the phrase human nature, it's linked to making mistakes. And we just say, well, that's just, how he is, or that's just how humans are. We make mistakes. There's imperfection there in what's going on. And I sometimes think that using the phrase in that way is a bit of a disservice because what is your human nature? Are you willing to stay in your wellness and your healthiness, right? Rather than go into illness or not being healthy. Because when you're being natural, all right, and you're showing up from this being fully human and being natural in this notion of being connected into the natural aspects of what surrounds you, then you are expressing your wellness. You're expressing being healthy. It allows you to just bring more of your naturalness flavor, right? And that is really important. And sometimes we forget that because we get told through use of technology, the news that's out there that gets a bit noisy in our lives, right? Sometimes we put up with something and say, well, that's just me aging and things like that. It's unfortunate because then you're not being natural. You're not tapping into what is available to you as someone who is being natural and being fully human and being so that you can have and do. So I just wanted to bring that forward because being natural is sort of a bridge between this notion of being for the world and with the planet. And that's why I'll be going over being planetary here in a second. But as always, I don't know, Doug, is there anything you want to add about being natural?
Well, and I think it comes back to what I said earlier about the being genuine and all of that part. And yeah, that would be the basics.
Yeah. I'm coming because I deal with the word wealth, WELLTH, about well-being
Yeah.
and well living. And I sort of say, okay, that's connected to this notion of illness and wellness and things like that. And so I go at it from a slightly different point of view as I bring that forward. But I'd like to bring up two more beings, being planetary, right, and being Solaris. Being planetary is really about your connection with the planet, your connection with nature, your other kin. So if you think being natural, all right, and being fully human, being natural is connecting with your kin, your family and friends, and that there is this the planet and all the other kin, all the other wild animals, and how we interact with them. And some people interact with them because of a population of some animal goes up or down. It influences their life, right? For a lot of us who are living in cities, we don't nearly think about that part of it because we just go to the grocery store and get what we need. Okay. But there are, interactions that are happening on a planetary level that actually influence our being. And we could go down the notion of, there's places in the world, there's pollution, there's, very thick pollution. There's other places in the world where there's drought. There's notion that influences our being. So when we present ourselves from a being natural, well, if we haven't eaten properly, it will influence. And that's why being planetary, being connected, understanding what's taking place, and more so to how to act ecologically, how to be in relationship with all the other kin and self, right? What is the ways in which you're going to do that? Sometimes it's about where you live. And I would go so far as to say, where's the closest tree to where you live that you've had a conversation with? I'll go so far as to say that, because again, that's another area that I deal with, is notion of mentoring and the outdoors and interacting with trees. Okay. So this notion of being planetary is your connection with nature, with the planet in and of itself, the oceans, the land masses. How do you connect with them? And if you're not really connecting with them, then I would encourage you to do so, because as a mentor, it may actually give you other ways in which to look at your mentoring approach. Doug, anything to add there?
The one thing that popped into my mind is, as you were talking, was the Disney movie and the Circle of Life.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Yeah.
Fits right into that quite nicely.
Yeah, and how to mentor into the circle of life, right? That's might even be a presentation at some point in time. Okay, so great. Well, thank you for that. So let me just give you the last one. Then I just want to make a couple of points that I think are important here. Being Solaris, Solaris being pertaining to the sun. So what I'm suggesting is, it's not about looking at the sun. That's not a good idea. It's about what is outside of our planet we call Earth. What is going on out there? What might we tap into? For those of you who are able to see the aurora borealis, it is a magical, magical sight to see that, and to be able to think about that's happening in space, and what is it that's out there that you might be able to bring in. The story of the stars and the galaxies, this notion of the unknown. How might you bring that in to conversations you're having while you're mentoring? Because you might go, well, is this a story that we want to share at this point in time? And I bring this up because I always encourage my mentees to play in the mystery of what it is that they're looking at. And mystery is about mystery. And steri is Scottish for star. So you can see where I'm trying to, the mystery, to get out into the unknown, is about being Solaris. Are you out there? Are you attempting to be from the whole and bringing any of that insights into what's going on? And as you start to explore it more, you start to go, wow, there's a lot more to it. And maybe the mentee you're interacting with has an opportunity to give you some insights, just like the mentee gaining insights from you, right? And it can deepen and enrich what's going on. Okay, so it's just expanding your being out even more. All right. So this notion of being fully human, being natural, being planetary, being Solaris, is in between this notion of I belong, I'm going to enter into those 5 beings so that I can become. So often what people do is they might just go, well, you belong, I'll just figure out my being, and then I'll just go to becoming something. But what we're hoping to offer you here is, in this being, there's a bit more to take in, whether it's philosophically, psychologically, sociologically, right? Just about how to be in relationship, to be in an arrangement with your mentee that just broadens the opportunities, the insights that are available to you and for you, right, with your mentee. But there's something I just like to share going out, and it links a bit more to the being natural. Not to say it doesn't happen to all of them, but that being natural is more like a linchpin. All right, it's a very vital concept to the organization of life and living. Being natural, coming to understand who you are. If a dolphin's a dolphin, All right, Stephen is Stephen, Doug is Doug. What does that mean? And being able to share that, these are important elements. And I know in my own life, I was confused there for a little while. And sometimes the notion of the mental health aspect gets you into a confused place and you don't feel natural. And that's what gets you into illness, right? Into some unhealthy behaviors and things like that. So if we come at this from being natural, all right, I believe it's what holds it together. It's an important aspect of living. And mentoring can do a lot of support in helping a person find that being natural, the mentee and for the mentor themselves. Because I believe it really makes a difference. Because when you come from a place of being natural, then you are in a place of ready, able, and willing to mentor. If you walk into a mentoring arrangement and you're a little bit, I'm not quite ready for today, or I'm not maybe got everything figured out, or today's not a good day, but I'll still do it, then you're not fully being natural and being ready, able, and willing. You got to get that together because you'll do a disservice, which could then end up affecting the person, like that ripple effect that might get them going, I'm not quite sure you're here for me, which could have a story gets built up in their head. So being natural is a really important element, and it's about being present, have the gratitude, the inspiration, the enthusiasm, and the certainty to be able to mentor. So if anything of these beings, be natural, be who you are, to Doug's point, authentic, right? Vulnerable, genuine, okay? And a way to remember that is the following. I would encourage you to do three things. To establish a preparation approach as you move into your mentoring. I also get you to think about what's my prevention backpack that I'm carrying with me of all of what it is that I know, or tools and techniques, so that it's available for me. But I can't bring a backpack that gets me pulling me back, right? And I can't bring in a little backpack that has nothing in it. I have to come at it. What is it that allows me to be natural? What am I carrying with me? What am I ready, willing, and able to bring forward? So the preparation approach, carry in your prevention backpack, and to practice continuation. Deepen, folks, deepen, folks, deep. Did I say that? Is that repeating? Am I on repeat? Deepen your practice, okay? And that's one of the things that Doug and I will constantly share with people is deepen your practice of being a mentor. In other words, belonging to the world of mentorship, being a mentor, all right, being in the sense of mentoring, all right, so that you can become that extraordinary mentor that you're meant to be, being natural and being in full service to the person that you're interacting with. So I'm hoping I've been able to weave a little bit of that together to give you a sense of this notion of belonging, being, and becoming. Anything you want to add to that, Doug?
The only thing I would add is that this is an opportunity for you to do something not only for the betterment of yourself as a mentor, but for the person that you're spending time with in a mentoring relationship. And you need to embrace that, and you need to embrace the significance of that relationship and of how mentoring can and how mentoring will make a very, very distinct difference in everyone's life today.
Yes. And just in my own closing, before I ask Doug to close off, which is what we do with every video, is that there's some resources I'm going to put down below. There's a chap that I had some wonderful time with. I consider him one of my mentors. Unfortunately, he's no longer walking the planet. He's transitioned. He shared some writings with me and some videos and that. And I'm going to put a couple of links to his work in the show more notes. But again, I just being natural, and I would encourage you, if you take these 7 word phrases around being and be and explore them, one at a time with your mentee, I believe be, to live, believe that it would be of great service to your mentoring connection, your mentoring arrangement. So with that, Doug, you get the closing remarks, and then when you say take care, we're going to shut her down for this version, this broadcast of the Mentoring Lounge.
So just the parting words from my perspective are just to make sure that you understand that you need to be there, and that people, especially when I think of the mental health space, people are going to reach out and are expecting that you're going to be there to help them, and just be there. And that's it.
Take care, everyone.